Welcome to Bullish on Farming. Today's July 31st, and what a great first half of summer we've had. The heat has been strong, the rain's been showing up when we need it, the cattle are healthy, the pastures are lush, and believe it or not, we're still not done our first lap. I know, I've never done this before, but things have been going exceptional. I can't complain. And you graze cows over the years, and I imagine there's different phases you go through on your journey as a grazer. You know what people are doing, somewhat what works generically. By that I'm alluding to the whole 2 acre per cow ratio. Last video I posted with the cows, I think we talked about how having more generosity and an abundance of pasture in your grazing program. We just discussed how we're really enjoying that this year and how it reflects more of the full circle design that these animals evolved within or were designed for. And so we're running 3.25 acres per cow. We're expanding, we're growing into our land, and we expect to be around 3 acres per cow next year, probably a bit under. And the luxury of growing into your land is that you get to understand and figure out how much animals your land can accommodate. And that goes back to the quality of your pasture, the fertility of your soil. And so, a lot of people, what they do is they stock their land what they think is theoretically a good fit, and then they figure out, we're actually overgrazing our pastures. We're not getting as much rest recovery as we'd hope for. And if it's a drier year, you need that much more of things going for you. And so, with more generosity built into your grazing program, or I should say with more generosity of land, you have more forgiveness accommodated within your grazing program. And so in the best case scenario, you have plenty of grass to not only extend your grazing season, but graze whenever the cows are able to do so. And where we are, that means, not 3 feet of snow, so that the cows can actually get to the grass. But by having grass readily available, you save money, but also have the opportunity to keep these animals on the land in a similar rotational system, although different than what we use, during the growing season. The principle is the same. You keep the animals on the move. Their occupation periods change depending on the season, and how much you want your animals to derive from the land depends on the season as well. In dormant seasons, the grass isn't going to offer the same nutritional value. And so you supplement with hay. At least that's what we've done. And we were able to pretty much graze, what was it? I think it was 8 to 9 months out of the grazing year last year. Right? And we're kind of counting from May to May for a full grazing season. No matter how you count it, 8 or 9 months out of the year, we were grazing. And we actually had our winter program in this field. So now, since winter, this is the first time we've done a rotation on the farm to get us back to where we were in the winter. Which means our next move will technically be initiating our second lap. And we really wanted to give this area time to bounce back because it had an extended occupation in the winter program. We were pushing into the field, and so although I did eventually section this off, the cows started closer to the bush there, and the wire moved forward as we continued to bale graze, and eventually start grazing in March when the snow melted away. But by giving this, up until now, August, 7th month out of the year, it's pretty much had the strongest growing portion of summer to now recover. And we're going to graze it now, and we're going to hope that by the end of this year, which is sometime November, December, there's going to be enough of a recovery to have our animals back here and graze. And maybe not completely rely on grazing in this field, because last year, December 1st, winter showed up, and bale grazing, we bale grazed half of that month, and then 100% of January, February. So a right snowy winter came early in the winter just passed. But if it's based off of what we usually get, snow doesn't really show up in that way until the beginning of January, which means that you could be grazing all of December. And I would much rather be grazing a stockpiled, rested field in December than moving all the way through winter until March to wait for the thaw to then start grazing that stockpiled field. Here we get so much snow, things get matted down by the snow and the ice, and so everything is just flat, and the cows can graze that. But that's still after the right winter months through the deep freeze. If there's going to be the poorest amount of nutritional value in that grass, it's going to be March before it really starts to wake up in April. And so we'd much rather graze stockpiled fields in December and then supplement with hay. Although, really watching closely how much grass to hay you're eating, or how much hay you need rather to meet their nutritional needs and to keep condition on them. And so you can probably count on leaning on your hay feeding March, April before you really get that May grass, and from that point there's no reason to be feeding hay. But in December, I think there's still value in that grass, which means if you can graze May through December until January, you're just talking January, February, March, and we actually turned out the third week of April. We had a week left in April before we just turned out recently. And so, if you're just feeding hay January, February, March, and then let's just say half of April, or just to be safe, call it all of April, that's 4 months that you need to be feeding hay, compared to 6 or 7. Now remember, we're running closer to 3 acres per cow, and we're grazing during dormant seasons. However, that grass is rest and recovered for 60 to 80 days if we're planning on our animals occupying those fields in the fall leading into winter. And so this is what we've done. This is what we've come to really experiment with. And the confidence behind the experiment comes from experience, but also through that experience, understanding the relationship between the land and these animals. Because they're definitely meant to forage and sustain themselves in a natural environment. However, I have found here in Canada, it's very difficult for these animals to perform in winter. And yes, they're not native to North America. However, it's important to be mindful of that and understand that. And I have learned that, of course, over time, but the hard way as well, because I like to push, push the line in the sense where I really experientially understand what these animals can do on their own and how much help they need in being managed during the dormant seasons. And I can say confidently that grazing through December into January, depending on whether or not winter shows up early, is perfectly fine, doable, and your cows are still going to get good value out of that grass for what they need. Remember, you could also supplement with hay and roll out bales if you wanted to. But if we're not talking about feeding hay until January, even when the snow melts away in March, April, you're definitely going to supplement with hay because that grass is at its end of this annual cycle, where it's at its poorest value for what it offers the cows. And so you're going to want to be really mindful of supplementing with enough hay, and depending on your experience, might just be better off relying on hay and experimenting with them grazing during that time of year, but not relying on the grazing to sustain them. And in and around that time is when your cows are going to be in their third trimester. And so it's the most important time for your cows to be getting top nutrition and enough caloric intake to maintain body condition, grow that calf, generate milk, and raise that calf, maintaining a good body condition. And so, yeah, we'll see how long we're in this field. We're going to march down, not going to do, a total graze style, which is what we've been doing on the past few fields as we headed this way, matting a lot down to reset and regenerate. But because we want to be back here, and it's going to be, fall, winter, we're just going to, graze about half of it. Well, that is graze and trample about half of it. So that about 50% stays standing. We really do want vegetative matter on top of the soil, and we want height to that, because that's what's going to allow that vegetation to offer enough to serve as an armor for the soil when the cows are back here fall, winter, when things tend to be wet and muddy. So get some good armor for the pasture here, and the performance of this pasture is just amazing compared to last year. And I can't say it's all due to the cows' impact, but we definitely, woke things up out here, because this was just a fallow field that didn't get much love from the animals. So anyways, folks, I think I'm going to cap it off here. I'd like to say thanks for stopping by, and God bless you all. See you on the next one.